You know, a thought occurs. We're 33% done with this entire series. I mean, yeah, there's still a lot to go, and this project hasn't exactly been a short-term thing, but in a way, I'm kind of proud of how far I've gone into the series. And while I have admittedly missed out on a few things here and there, a few new weapons that weren't released at the time to be specific, I, so far, would still agree with the majority of what I've said throughout the series. Take Ironbreaker as an example. Would I switch out my fire weapon for the Troll Hammer? Well, no. The Troll Hammer is an excellent panic weapon when you're faced with a bit too much to handle. As far as the Ironbreaker is concerned, he isn't exactly rolling in melee talent and ability. He, at least for me, relies on his ranged weapon of choice to make up for it. The Steam Crank Gun for the Outcast, the Drake Fire for the Ironbreaker, etc. But what happens when you strip that away? Then you get this guy, the Slayer. And while he, in many cases, shares similarities to the Grail Knight, the two careers function a bit differently. Kruber's Grail Knight offers support, a career skill that can one-shot Chaos Warriors and even double up to stack the damage onto monsters and lords. The majority of his talents focus on his melee capabilities, obviously, which is exactly the same as Slayer in that regard. I mean, before we even get into the talents, we already see that he can swing faster, follow through on attacks, even upon taking damage, and does up to 30% more damage consistently throughout a fight with little to no effort on the Slayer side. He has a career skill that gives him an excellent mobility option that can phase through even monsters and lets him swing even faster, meaning for the large majority of the Slayer's existence, he swings and deals damage 30% faster. Now that is impact. Then, and only then, do we get into his talent pool. Like how if you set your two melee weapons of choice up in certain ways, you can amplify the damage you deal through certain means. Like if you use two-handed weapons in each of your melee slots, you get up to 15% extra power. Or how if you use two single-handed weapons instead, you get extra attack speed, which some of you might know by now I am just so horny about. Of course, if you choose to break those two requirements by using a single-handed and two-handed weapon, you can still get extra crit chance, which, paired with a crit trait, allows you to have whatever that trait provides for you more often. Now, some of my longer-term viewers might already know where I'm leaning due to my preference for single-handed weapons over double, but due to the large increase in attack speed and a lot of diligence and patience, I, at the very least, can handle either style semi-comfortably. I mean, at least enough to get this thing. No small feat if you ask me, especially now. If it isn't already obvious, Slayer is about as front lines as you can get, so obviously health maintenance will be a pretty important area of focus. So I'll boil it down to this. If you use single-handed weapons, use Doomseeker. If you're rolling with two-handed weapons, use Fury. Although, if I had to roll with one over the other, I'd go Doomseeker due to the fact that hordes sometimes won't give you the health you need just by killing them. And once again, if you know anything about me, you know that I believe that hordes are the most important times to be able to gain temporary health. Talent set number 3 is pretty interesting, and I am sure plenty of people will tell you to go Enhanced Power. I mean, staggered or not, you deal more damage to your opponent. But honestly, I'd rather go with Mainstay. You will be staggering a lot of enemies throughout your runs, so maximizing the damage to already staggered foes is pretty important. Theoretically, Smitter would work well for elites. Imagine it like the middle ground, if you will. The only reason I went with Enhanced Power in my Grail Knight video is that I was sometimes capable of staggering Plague Monks with a shield without any extra power aside from Enhanced. Here, obviously, you don't have a shield, so you can't exactly copy that strategy here, can you? As always, talent set number 4 focuses on your career passive, giving you up to 30% extra movement speed at a very consistent rate, especially during hordes, the ability to deal an extra 10% damage to your foes, or the ability to recover your ult at an extremely high rate. And pause. Alright, now that I have your attention, I know you're expecting me to pick the talent that I think you should go with, but before we do that, we gotta bounce over to talent set number 6, so here we go, and unpause. Talent set number 6 is where the hits the fan, increasing your overall stagger effect when you land after leaping enough to phase up to Chaos Warriors, some sort of super damage option that I'm betting lets you one-shot elites and stuff. Honestly, it's not that good in my opinion. Also, kind of hard to use. I don't know, I've never tried it. Or an extra 25% movement speed while Leap is active, which combined with a property from your Trinket and talent from the 4th set allows you to move up to 60% faster, which sounds incredibly fun. But in my tests, I found that my eyes just can't keep up with how fast I'm moving. It's just too much information to process, and trust me, there is a better combination than that ever could hope to be. That being Adrenaline Surge and Crunch. They have excellent synergy with each other, allowing you to begin battles comfortably, no matter where you land, recover your ult back fast enough to use it multiple times during one sequence, and, by extension, keeping that 30% attack speed until it isn't required anymore. Also, on a related note, Crunch and Surge help you use your ult for other things too. You can close the distance between your counters, such as gun and fire rats, extremely well. Also, I can't confirm this, but I don't think you take knockback while Leap is in effect, which also helps. Which helps me transition into my next topic, melee weapon combinations I use and would also recommend staying away from. First and foremost, the throwing axe. The biggest gripe I have with the throwing axes is that the majority of the reasons I would want to use it can be solved with Leap. Fire and gun rats aren't an issue anymore since I can leap right in their face and stagger them. However, in a scenario where Leap and Adrenaline Surge alone cannot work quickly enough to resolve the situation, most commonly when there are too many specials on the field, aka Fortunes of War most of the time, then I can see the throwing axes getting some love. Which case, you need a weapon that can handle the most situations possible while leaving you vulnerable in the fewest. My recommendation would be either the dual hammers, the cog hammer, or the great hammer. Heck, even the great axe works pretty well. I would just prefer the great hammer over the great axe. If you're going for single-handed weapons, you can do it one of two ways. The first way would be the dual hammers and dual axes. The dual hammers for hordes, axes for elites. It's easy to get the 40% damage reduction and... oh my god, I forgot talent set number 5. To make a long story short, I go Grimnir's Focus, since you kind of need that damage reduction for hordes, and if it isn't obvious yet, I don't like talents that don't focus on hordes as much, so yeah, Oblivious to Pain isn't quite for me, I guess. Another quick note is that the weapon combinations I'm laying out to you are good at maintaining that damage reduction. Anyways, back to the dual axes. What the dual axes lack in stamina, they more than make up for in non-charged attack and push-whack damage. Only thing is, yeah, that stamina count is a bit of a turnoff for me, so I personally don't use the dual axes. Instead, I employ my second method, otherwise known as the min-maxing strat. You use 2 dual hammers, one maxing out offense, the other maxing out defense. Great for when you're faced with a bit too much spam and just need to tank some hits. Add on the necklace's 30% block cost, and your secondary can have up to 60% block cost and 5 stamina bars. Not really a whole lot of pushing going on here, so maximizing block cost is way more worth it. Also, if you perform charged attacks, switching between your 2 weapons each time, you can chain together some very interesting damage numbers since the dual hammer's most powerful attack pattern is its over-the-head vertical damage. The majority of Bardin's 2-handed weapons are pretty well rounded, dare I say similar, so selecting which weapon to use for each scenario might be actually tougher than it may seem. You might think to use the 2 great weapons, but to be honest, it'd be kind of a waste. The hammer has more cleave and hits harder, but swings a tad slower. Other than that, the 2 weapons are basically the same. But if you employ the cog hammer for elites, you'll do way better thanks to the cog's devastating verticals. Plus, you will be constantly getting Grimnir's Focus, so you never have to worry about that, which leaves only the Pickaxe. The Pickaxe is even more devastating over the top if you charge your swing to full, and it takes time. I'd say it's better for smaller chunks of enemies, but starts to get outclassed when there are simply too many to fully charge your hits for. If it were up to me, I'd go Great Hammer for hordes and staggers, along with the cog for elites. Generally, I lean towards offense over defense here, but for the cog, I might recommend block cost, just so it can be a bit more tanky. And to wrap this section up, here's my Trinket, Necklace, and Charm. Honestly, Decanter isn't the best choice for Slayers since he gets his ult back so quickly, so Proxy might work better. Everything else falls falls into its respective patterns. Health and defense for the necklace, crit chance and stamina regen for the trinket, and attack speed and power versus chaos for the charm. Also, please make the throwing axe a one-handed weapon. And with that, the video is drawing yet again to its conclusion. Hard to believe we're a third of the way done with this series, and quite annoyingly, we haven't done a single Sienna video or a single Cerulean video. And unfortunately for me, it is going to stay that way. My next video, or maybe rather videos, will be dealing with a couple of things. Firstly, you might have noticed that a couple episodes... Oh, but I already did this. Most notably, Kruber, Bardin, and Victor's weapons weren't out yet. Now I have 3 entirely new weapons I gotta review, and while I'm at it, I might as well take the time to address another video I made in great detail. Anyways, that's all folks. Thanks for watching, and see you till next time. Later, peoples.